Hello Dennis, it's great to see you. Thanks ever so much for agreeing to come and talk to us about machinima. So, have you ever made a machinima?
Yes, I've made one or two, sort of experimentally.
Ah, that's interesting. And have you managed to use them in any teaching at all?
No, because I haven't for a long time been doing much teaching apart from one to one. So I've presented them to my granddaughter, but and people like that, but not real classroom teaching.
Okay, so what do you think makes a machinima a useful resource?
I think the first question I always start with, what am I trying to teach, and then what can I use that can help? And I think machinima are marvelous. They are can be used if you're clever enough in a whole range of roles in language teaching.
So, how long do you think the ideal machinima should be?
Yeah, again, starting from the point of view of the person learning the language, I would say fairly short for various reasons, but 5, 6, 7 minutes, that sort of length, and probably not longer.
Do you think it'd be good for learners to make machinima themselves?
Absolutely. I think that I've noticed with friends and colleagues making them, one gets carried away making machinima, and that's what I've really learned from our colleagues. I think it's almost ideal, whatever age group you're thinking of, that if they can be involved in making the machinima themselves, directed by the teacher or instructor, I think that's probably ideal rather than the instructor making them.
Ah, that's interesting. So, do you think that also applies to the language classroom? Do you think there's value in machinima for English language teaching?
Yes, I think most certainly this is a kind of general principle. I think that it's fairly normal for teachers to think that they've got to prepare, they've got to do things, and of course they have. But if you can get the learners, in this case making the machinima, they might, in the act of doing it, they will be concentrating on making the machinima, with you guiding them, but they may very well learn an awful lot of language as long as you get them doing it in English, of course, if English is the language we're interested in.
There's lots of discussion at the moment about whether text on a machinima is good or not. What do you feel about that?
Well, I think the first statement I'd make or repeat really is always start with the teaching that you're concerned with or the learning. So it depends very much who your machinima is being made for. And I think if you are teaching beginners or especially younger learners, then text can help tremendously. I understand the argument from the other side. I mean, in the 60s, I suppose I was very fond of using language laboratories, and I really believed in that. Don't give them the text because then they won't listen attentively. But I think with machinima, as I say, it depends so much what you're doing. One of the machinima, or one or two that I made, um, I noticed that my granddaughter, I get all my best ideas from her at the moment. She's 10. She loves jokes and she's very keen on learning English. And so I thought, well, let me try and make some machinima to get the joke across. And actually, she'll be learning English, but she will just be, watching what's happening. And I found the use of text there. The animals that I used in it, they spoke, but I also put what they had said, in speech bubbles. I'm sort of going against what I used to do in the language laboratory, but sound can be problematical in Second Life. So, but I think that is for sort of young learners or beginners, and I can imagine for much more advanced learners, it depends what you're doing with your machinima, and sometimes I would agree text would be very inappropriate, but sometimes it could be very useful and supportive.
Okay, are there specific things that a teacher needs to keep in mind when making a machinima for classroom use?
I would say yes. I'm saying this now for about the third time, I guess. Begin with with a language teaching problem or theme that you want to deal with, I would say. And if you know what you want to teach, or rather what you want your learners to learn, then think, can machinima help? I say that because those of us who really enjoy making machinima, it's so easy to get carried away by the fun of making it, by the technique, that one can forget its purpose, which is pedagogical, which is to assist language learning. So I would say that is perhaps the users, especially teachers who are using it for the first time, must be very careful about that. Think, will it help? If it helps, then use it. If it doesn't, well then don't use it, or at least make sure that you find something where it will really help, where it will make learning more easily than almost in any other way you can think of, because it's a marvellous resource still to be explored. We're all just beginning and seeing what we can do with it.
And finally then, my last question is, do you have any tips for teachers who'd like to try and make a machinima?
Yes, I think first go befriend is easily done in Second Life. Make friends with somebody who makes machinima or who has made some, and watch them doing it, so that it will help tremendously, because when you make your first one, it's you can't avoid being obsessed with the technique. You know, you've got to make sure you're focusing on what you want to focus on. So you know, go to a webinar if there is one, or at least go and watch somebody making a webinar. Don't try and do it absolutely all on your own. I think that would be most frustrating.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for all your hints and tips. I think you'll give teachers a lot to think about.